Run that CIC meeting. Great. I got it on video.
Okay, if I could have your attention. We will call the Tuesday, July 13th work session to order. I don't know if I should, but Dana is doing fine and is in Florida, and we'll be back sometime soon, and we'll be glad to have him. I told him he didn't have to go to this extent to miss a meeting. That
we would have just given him
we'd given him a pass, but he's doing well. And if we hear some snoring going on like we have before in this meeting, it'll be Vernon. Vernon just back from a 12-hour flight from Europe, I think, landed not too long ago. You look like you went down to the Bermudas or something. You're tan. I didn't know they had that much sun in Europe.
Got up in the mountains.
Okay. So if there's any snoring, it'll be Vernon doing that. Welcome back. We missed you. It's always, it's good to be noticed that you're gone, because if you're not noticed, you might find out that, oops, I don't have a desk anymore. Okay, item number 2 is comments from the citizens. This is on issues that are not on the work session agenda. If you have a comment or something that's on the agenda, please wait till that item comes before the board, and we'll ask you to come up here. Try to be as casual as possible, but if there is an issue that anyone wants to address that's not on this work session agenda, we'd be glad to hear from you at this moment. I know we've got one, so for sure. No, you sit right here. You sit right here.
Give me hands up.
We like to have your back to the crowd. That one.
We'll watch your back.
I don't know a number of you. My name is Jim Monser. I'm the Senior Vice President of Operations for Biomimetic Therapeutics. We're on Nickel Mill Lane, and so I'd like to, a number of years ago I came to this group and gave you all an overview of Biomimetic, what we're about, and why we're excited about the partnership with the state, the county, and the city. And I'd like to just kind of renew that a little bit, give you an update of where we are. We are a biological device company. We have a bone regeneration system that's made up of a human protein and a synthetic tissue matrix material. Our lead product was developed and introduced into the market, approved by FDA in 2005 for periodontal bone regeneration. So we've commercialized a product already. We started in about 2001. I'm the 4th employee. We worked with the state and the county and the city, and in 2005 we moved into the first building in the Cool Springs Life Sciences Center with 26 employees. In 2006, we went through another round of work with the county, the city, and the state, and we received a $5 million TIPS grant, fast track grant from the state, and some tax incentives through the county and the city to build the second building in the Life Sciences Center. And we are now about 100 employees. We are working on our second generation product, which is for orthopedic bone regeneration. And we've completed clinical trials, and I don't know how much you followed our press releases, but we're expecting to see product approval for that, or FDA approval rather, for that product towards the end of, or about the middle of next year. So we're going to launch into distribution operations, adding operations staff, adding sales staff, and beyond the 100 people, we would expect that we could grow potentially another 30 or 40 next year. We would see distribution operations, traffic that comes with that. So we feel that this project is come due in a lot of respects. If you follow the history, it goes all the way back to 2001 or 2002 with an original TIPS grant from the state and partnership through the city. We realize that times are hard and have been hard and difficult to get this thing through to funding all of the different aspects of the project. But based on where we are and what we expect to do over the next few years, we certainly wanted to voice our support for the project. I know that Sam Lynch wrote a letter that y'all have, but I wanted to come and give you just a little update, a little more flavor around the growth that we've had and where we're going over the next few years. So,
any questions?
Would this distribution be from the same?
Say again?
From the same area?
Yeah, it will.
Building?
Yeah. We won't have large distribution operations, that you might see in a large distribution center, but we will be shipping product out to what should be about 25 affiliate sites across the nation and into Canada as well.
Or is this kind of conditional with the approval?
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, so it should be about mid-year. We hope to have, actually, we've got our initial plans for the distribution facility under review with codes right now. We plan on building that facility out in the latter half of the year, and so then we would start clinical distribution in the first half of next year.
Are y'all connected in any way? We also got a letter from Holiday Inn.
From the developer of
Yeah.
doing that,
Yeah,
who's in the hall, in the audience right here. So Alan Revelette sent that letter.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that part of the complex?
It is not part of the complex. You're welcome. Any
When's
other
the
questions?
initial public offering?
Actually, we went through an IPO in 2006, so you're behind the game on that. And
You're getting ready for another one.
Well, yeah, if you've seen the press releases, we're actually going through another fundraising, and that's why Sam could not be here. He really wanted to be here to probably better looking than I am, but anyway, he's in New York going through that road show for the fundraising. We're trying to raise an additional about $50 million or so.
One more question.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about the employees, these 100 people. Who are they and where do they come from?
It's a mix of admin, manufacturing, quality assurance professionals, clinical specialists, regulatory affairs, and R&D. It's a real mixed bag in terms of educational backgrounds, ranges from PhDs and multiple degrees to people with associate's degrees. And we've been able to recruit from all over the nation. You know, sometimes people think, well, first off, you don't think of Nashville when you think of biotech and life sciences. So recruiting here has been a little bit of a challenge, but once we get through the description of what our product and technology is and start to talk about Nashville, we've been able to draw people from Santa Barbara, Austin, Texas, Seattle, Raleigh, Durham, Boston, Boulder, Colorado, and I'm listing kind of the places that people typically view as the nicest places in the nation to live. We generally haven't had too much trouble getting people.
Now, this is the 66th best place in the nation, as pronounced by Money Magazine yesterday.
Well, you know, I'm a transplant, so now that I'm here, I prefer that not too many other people come along.
You're the head of the NIMBYs. Is that what it is?
I've adapted, and as far as I'm concerned, everybody else can stay away.
I
Like that bad, actually.
I will mention, earlier this year, we had another nice recognition. Bloomberg reported it, and a site selection website also reported us as one of the top 10 locations in the country to start a business. And one of the areas they highlighted specifically was the Life Science Center as one of our cutting-edge economic development opportunities. So that's another piece of it and another feather in your cap for what you're doing.
If I may, you know, this isn't just about Biomimetic. This is about Life Sciences Center, about even broader than the Life Sciences Center, developing a hub and a cluster for life sciences and biotech companies. And I'm very active with the developer and trying to recruit other companies. And every once in a while, the issue of accessibility, tell me about the site, that comes in. So again, that road project is important in that respect. And we're very active in trying to recruit other companies and excited about getting it there.
Thank you, appreciate it. Anybody else? Okay, let's go to the May 1st, 2010 flood status update report.
Just give you a brief report on items of interest related to our flood response and recovery efforts. As we reported last meeting, our focus now has been with FEMA and going through the reimbursement submissions and identifying the various projects that are eligible for federal dollars and doing that. And to date, we have submitted 10 items or 10 projects for consideration for those reimbursements at a total of those 10 projects of about $188,852 is the grand total of the submissions to this point, and we're continuing to work with FEMA on those. We have a little bit of respite this week in terms of the submissions because our FEMA contact is on vacation for a week, and when she returns we'll have some other things to submit, but while she's on vacation we're working up new items and new submissions to get ready for when she returns. So that's been ongoing, and we're really doing it by department, by project area. They have the 6 or 7 categories of reimbursement areas, of categories for those, and we're identifying it by department, by those categories, and getting those submitted, and also by the funding source from our standpoint. Also continue to work with insurance in the property damage areas. TML did provide us with a $75,000 advance to go towards our immediate needs for eligible uses, and we'll continue to work with them as we identify the property damage issues that fit the insurance category as well. So that work is ongoing. We continue to work with that. Other areas of particular interest, the structures, homes and businesses impacted. As we reported at the outset, 449 structures were damaged in some form in the event. 393 of those structures were in the 100-year floodplain. As we look at it today, we initially identified around 35 properties that were in that substantially damaged category, which is a 50% or more. That list has grown a little bit over time as we identify other potential ones to probably about 44 properties that we've looked at. We've done detailed assessments now on 32 of that total group of properties, and at this point have 10 that we feel right now fall into that definition of 50% or more, the substantial damage, which is a definition that we have to abide by in terms of the National Flood Insurance Program. So even though we've identified 10 at this point after detailed assessment, we continue to work with those property owners. They're providing us, as recently as today, information about where they are with assessment of the property value, estimates for the repair costs by contractors, by licensed contractors. So we all look at that and continue to do that calculation, and that's how some of them that we initially identified in that substantially damaged category have dropped off, because they've shown us costs for repair that can bring them in under that 50%, and they are no longer in that category, and we move forward with building permits and working with them in that regard. So that continues to be an ongoing process, and working with those impacted property owners in that way. And again, we continue to offer free building permits for folks who are flood impacted, and work with them in that regard. And if they have questions, we urge them to come into Building and Neighborhood Services and set up time to meet with our staff, and we will look at property with them, share information with them, and help work through that process. One of the other related issues to that is we expressed interest a few weeks ago in working with TEMA to pursue the hazard mitigation program, which is essentially where the state applies the federal government for dollars that can go into mitigation programs, an element of which is the ability to purchase frequently damaged, flood damaged property, and to look at a purchase program as well. We have a essentially day-long meeting tomorrow with TEMA to go over the details of that program, and we have 5 or 6 staff people who will be attending that tomorrow to get the specifics of how that program will work, and we'll bring that back to you. And I expect at our meeting on the 27th we'll have a lot more information to share with you, and can start down discussions there about where we go with decisions related to our potential participation in that program. At this point, we've expressed an interest. We don't have enough information to make a commitment, and we'll get further down that road, I think, after this meeting tomorrow, and we'll see where we are after that and bring more information to you then. Again, we want to urge people, the deadline for application for FEMA assistance was extended to August 5th. That deadline is still out there, has not changed, so August 5th is your deadline to apply, and you can't get any assistance if you don't apply. So we continue to urge people, as we have since probably May 2nd, that you need to apply if you think at all you might have been impacted, and that's both residences and businesses. So, and businesses are able to define that impact as not only direct flood damage, but the impact to their business as a result of the flooding overall and the impact to the community. So we urge folks to look at that, and if there's a question, to go ahead and apply and start in that process, because if you don't apply and try to revisit that a couple months from now, there may not be much we can do for you. So that's really the update that I have at this point in the work that we're doing. And we'll continue to work with property owners, work with the reporting and submission process for FEMA for our eligible reimbursements, and we'll continue to do that. I think we're just getting into the surface of this on that end, and that will be something that will continue for the next several months.
Any questions?
Yeah, I just have one comment to make, is that, you know, we're looking at this on the city side, but I think we also need to keep in mind all the people that have been affected. And there, I mean, you know, we drove into some places recently, and even though there's some progress, it's going to be a long and difficult road for them. And I think we all ought to keep that in mind, too.
Very true.
You said there was initially 35 that had been recognized as having 50% damage, and that had gone to 44. That's our estimate.
But it's back down to 10, isn't
But
it?
the ones that we've done detailed assessments on that are still at that substantially damaged category is at 10 at this point.
Okay.
So there are ones we identify from initial estimates, and as information comes to us that we look at, and then we get into more detail and look at them. We've still got some we still need to get access to do the more detailed assessment. But at this point, the ones that, in our view, have hit that threshold or that assessment of substantial damage is 10.
That's out of the 32 evaluated.
Out of the 32 we've done evaluations, detailed assessments on, and that's where we are.
Okay, thanks. Item number 4, status update of water conservation. It rained.
Rained quite a bit.
All right. Okay, item number 5.
He's been doing a
Good
great
job.
We'll take just a minute on this. We did get some communication out over the last week or so, just to make sure folks were aware of the importance of water conservation. You know, we also wanted to highlight some success in that regard. We were able to report a 10% reduction in demand for the month of June 2010 compared to June 2008, which was also a very hot, dry month. And so we wanted to get some credit out there to our customers, our citizens, for doing a good job on conservation. That's a significant reduction. But we also wanted to raise the awareness that we continue to urge that's a good practice every day, but is particularly important as we enter into the hot, dry months of summer, and we wanted to keep people aware of that. We're particularly aware of it this summer as our reservoir is offline, as we're doing the repairs and expansion of that, and that's going to be a great project for us long-term. And also we're able to leverage $1 million worth of federal funding in doing that as well. So that's all been, will long-term be a positive, but removes a little bit of cushion that we normally have in the system because that's not online for us. So those were the sort of things we wanted to highlight for everybody. Also, a number of system improvements that have taken effect in the last year or two that I think are having a positive impact, and I'll let Mark talk about where we are in his perspective on that.
As Eric had said, we continue to encourage conservation. We have done a number of projects over the past few years that we think has improved the status of the water system as a whole. As Eric also mentioned, with our reservoir offline, we are keeping a very close eye on the rainfall and the river flow. And like he had said, we want to continue that voluntary conservation effort that people are showing, and we do appreciate those efforts considerably. So, do you have any questions?
The river now?
We currently are. The flow in the river is about 130 CFS.
wow.
That's good.
And that's going to fluctuate very rapidly with these
130.
rainfalls. So
130.
Versus 10.
it's going to go down rather rapidly.
Yeah.
And we just hope that the rain continues.
And see, that's why you need the reservoir. I mean,
What's
what's
happening with the reservoir?
Reservoir, currently they're doing the final grading of the reservoir. There should be a couple more weeks of work in that area, at which point they'll start the lining process, which is about a 3-week process. And then there's some other work that they need to do to make sure that, to finish out the project. I have an inquiry into the project manager for a revised project schedule if there's any revisions, but as of the start of this meeting, I hadn't been able to coordinate with that person. person, so I apologize for not having that available.
Our previous projections had been around September
Right.
for the reservoir to be back online.
And just,
Still looks pretty good.
Seems that
I believe
we're
so.
on track with that.
We've had, with the flood issue and some rain, it's hard to work in the slop out there, so it's...
So you're complaining about rain now?
I honestly hate it, so anyway.
well, and I think it's important for just anybody that's listening and watching this, is that, as an example, if we had our reservoir online, we would be pumping into the reservoir as fast as we could. We will, when we get done, we'll have something in excess of 100 million gallons. We can produce 2 million gallons a day, which is a 50-day backup. So, in normal summers where we might have a rain like this, we can pump as quick as we can and have 50 days of reserve. Now, we can only just pump and produce. So, so when it gets down below 10, we're done. We have to shut down, and we can't go back up till it gets above 10. And then we have a limited amount that we can withdraw until it gets to a higher level, whatever that formula is. So I think that's what everybody needs to pay attention to, and this rain's been a blessing, but it does make a difference.
The other thing, we highlighted about 5 or 6 system improvements, and the bottom line on most of those improvements is they improved our ability to draw more of a volume of water in from Harpeth Valley into our system.
And this is extremely important, and we need to,
And so that's a big piece of this that we didn't have a couple years ago that we have now. And so that goes a long way. The other thing that we did last summer that I think is and we'll need to continue to do as we go on is leak detection, being more aggressive in that and making those repairs. What we did just last year, we think provided a repair of 40 million gallons of water that would have otherwise been lost in the system. So that helps improve the efficiency of our system as well. So all these improvements work together to make it more reliable, but having the reservoir offline does impact us, does remove that bit of cushion we had from that standpoint, and using fully using our treatment capacity. So that's why we want to make sure people are particularly aware of it now. It's always a good practice, and we're pleased at the success that people have shown, but we want to continue to urge them to do that and do it more if they can.
So what's our daily usage now?
It's fluctuating. Russell, I don't know what your max daily usage had been that you had seen.
About 6 yesterday.
It was 6 yesterday? Okay, so
6 million gallons.
6 million a day, but we've been going up to 8 and
That's right.
change.
Yeah.
So we were buying 8 million gallons from Harpeth Valley
Yes, sir.
and able to get that.
That's what was flowing in about a week ago.
That is the
Just
reason,
under.
yes, that's wonderful.
We
And a
had
big improvement from
Engineering.
two plus years ago.
Huge improvement.
Big improvement.
also currently doing some other projects on Downs Boulevard. You see the reclaimed water project, that's in concert with a water project as well. That's going to be a tremendous asset to the city, and a handful of others that are going on right now. So looking forward to the completion of those.
Thank you, Mark.
Mark, what's our capacity to pump out of the river without restrictions into the reservoir per day?
About 11
Right now?
for our water pump, if we could pump as much as we could.
The current pump 7.5 million.
7.5.
Permit says 11.
Okay.
Okay, item number 5, discussion of Williams County Breezeway School Site Plan and rezoning process.
Okay. Good evening.
Good evening, Kathy.
The purpose of this is to talk about an accelerated process that will allow Williamson County School District to follow our procedures while at the same time open their school in August of 2011. The timeline is very, very accelerated. It's about 6 weeks from now. We anticipate that if everything goes according to plan, we would be looking at it at BOMA for rezoning August 26th. So that is very accelerated, but it does include...
Final rezoning.
Final rezoning.
Third reading.
You're right. But it does include all of the processes, including a neighborhood meeting. So everything is included in here, including site plan, concept plan, the rezoning, and the regulating plan. Going through our process in about 6 weeks That means that there can be no deferrals, there can be no, they're going to have to get us very accurate, complete sets of plans, and we're going to have to work with them to do that. It is a win-win for both of us. We get to follow our process without any problems doing that, and they get what they need in the way of approvals.
And I just want to commend Catherine and her staff working with Williams County Schools, and, this is a...
And Shauna as well.
I think you had something to say.
I just wanted to let you guys know that we're working with a memorandum of understanding with the county that we'll probably present to you at the next work session and maybe vote on it at that time. Just explaining why we're doing what we're doing, making sure that it's clear that this doesn't create any sort of precedent for either us or the county. We just put our legal positions in a document. I'm working with Bill back there in the corner to just explain why we've accelerated it and put our legal positions in writing.
Nor does it create any precedent for any other development.
But we recognize this is a unique circumstance. We're trying to work together to do that.
These are our kids on the eastern side of the city, too.
A lot of them are.
Where are we going to be able to ask some questions that are, I'm just right now looking up some of these emails that I've gotten.
Sure.
And there were some questions about the sewer and hooking onto the sewer over there, because we have sewer availability and water availability in that particular spot versus the Cloverclough spot, which was actually better for them. But still, some of the comments have been made. Maze Creek Basin requires improvement. So what about the Maze Creek Basin to hold that capacity? The road issue as well, but the road issue really is not a city road. It is the county road, I believe, in there, except, it is a split log. And then Wilson Pike with one-lane tunnels, that's county, or state, actually. And then the school to hook up to the sewer, they estimated it to cost at least $1 million. And I thought that was sort of excessive compared to the other site, because I thought the other site was about $1 million, and they were saying that this should be less money to hook up to the sewer. And then the road access, which was, and this is another point about planning, road access is needed on the hill past the pump station that's presently there. So these issues they wanted to address, and where and when will those issues be addressed?
Those issues will be addressed at the staff level. They're already doing a traffic analysis, and we've received a preliminary traffic analysis from them. It may not cover all of the particular intersections, but we have received something that will be distributed. And the sewer and water hookups, I know our engineering department will be working with them to take care of those kind of things. They will be part of the site plan that will go before the Plan Commission, and will be addressed at that time as well. And the public hearing, certainly that is the opportunity
When will that
for
public
the
hearing be
residents
slated
to.
for? Early, second Tuesday of August, wouldn't it?
Right, I believe it's July.
They're going to have, they're also going to have a neighborhood meeting.
Right, but
too.
that's
Public
different.
hearing will be the
Second Tuesday, wouldn't it be?
The first, it's the second Tuesday, but the first meeting of August.
Yeah, the August 10.
First meeting.
You know what I mean?
Yes. And they will also have a neighborhood meeting where they'll be able to answer some of those
Well,
questions.
I'm particularly concerned about the Maze Creek Basin because, and Dana's not here, so I'll speak for him, that I know that he has always been concerned about the Maze Creek Basin as well as I have been. And so I want to know about the capacity. I need to make sure that we're addressing that and that we'll get that information. And also the concern about the plans that they have is that one way in, one way out, and having another access, because I know our fire marshal will be concerned about that, and I know those things will get addressed, but this is what I'm hearing.
And this item will be on your agenda every meeting going forward. Yeah, until between now and the end of August, there'll be one first reading, public hearing, third reading, and then the planning commission process as well. So.
And we will ask our engineering department to work with them in getting you those answers.
Yeah, and see, I know from the other site, this was a much more desirable site compared to the last one.
Right, because just the ability to get sewer has made a big difference.
Exactly, but it still seems that it's very costly, so, we all know how costly sewer can be. Are we going to ask if there's anybody here?
We can, if
I don't
anybody
know.
wants to. You want to say anything, or if I were you, I would.
I don't need to say anything. My name's Jason Golden. I'm the COO and General Counsel for the school system, and we appreciate the work we're doing together on this.
Thank you.
All right, great.
Thank you. There's somebody, you care to come up? Pardon?
Come on.
Yeah, I mean,
Come on.
I just noticed that there was one person. Yeah.
I'm Kathy Weber, and I live over in the Worthington subdivision, which is right across from Breezeway, and have been part of the onset of all this development on the east part of our county. And sorry, I'm a little bit under the weather here, but we have had several meetings, and we've met graciously with the school board, presented to them the issues of the sites, and we've also been, as a community, helping to try to find land to help them, you know, get a site that's going to be safe for everybody in that area, not only for the children, but for the residents that are currently living there. The one-way tunnels, we all know the situation, and we know the money's involved that's going to take place from the state to do that. They're not even, the 2020 plan has expired, folks, on Wilson Pike, okay? That was to be done, I believe, by the end of 2012. But the rezoning of everything in that area has created chaos for the residents, because even now, trying to get out on the busy time of the morning with the onset of traffic and everything coming from Nolansville is really extensive. And of course, not to, let's say, put a damper on it, but I know that the roads within inside of Breezeway were approved to be smaller than the city standards. And when I was here for that public meeting, your own fire marshal or your fire chief got up and spoke about that and how he felt that that should not be something approved. Well, it was approved. So now you have roads within Breezeway that are leading into where this possible school is going to be that aren't even within city standards for emergency vehicles, with parked vehicles on roads. So that was one issue that some of us remembered from the previous public hearings that we conducted with everyone. And we're just concerned about all that and the cost too, and we're still wondering why, and we'll discuss it more with the county and the school board as to why Trinity is not a site, the fact that we already own the land as far as county taxpayers, that they can't expand there. There was a possibility of actually building a smaller unit because of the grades that are affected are just 1 through 3, I believe. And so they were looking at that, did eco studies on the land and everything, and they came up to say that the septic needed to be expanded. But I know I'm looking for alternatives for the cost that's going to be incurred to all the taxpayers relative to the $22 million school going in. And the strategic plan for the school board is not yet done. So we as people in the county are even asking, why is it even necessary when they don't have the strategic plan to know the total volume of the county? And I think being a city resident or a county resident, we're all taxpayers for our schools. And we all have to pay taxes for our schools. And I think we should all be diligent in trying to save money where we can, especially now in these times when we need so many different other improvements. But speaking for the residents there, as Bev has been graciously coming out to the meetings, and again, I thank that because we've always had that between the city and the county. Our district, for some reason, had people that like working together, and it's great. And we just want to help the solution because we don't feel right now, and of course, the zoning is an issue for the residents that live there because everyone tries to purchase a home based on a land use plan and what they know is going to be in the environment in which they're going to live. People that are living out there want rural living. They do not want urban living. And they do not want a school in their backyard, and they don't want commercial. So I'm just bringing these issues to you to let you know what you're probably going to be hearing on the public hearing. And Bev is right about the Mace Creek Basin, because I do have the study at home, and the pipes currently that are there need to be enlarged. And when you're talking about a large structure like a school, the runoff of the roof and the concrete, what it's going to create for the people where those natural streams across the way into the county flow. We've already had issues with the widowed lady across the street from Breezeway that's had several issues with the water drainage. So there's several issues, and I think there probably will be maybe public hearings for even TDEC. I mean, even with the approval, I'm sure that the citizens will ask for that. So I don't know why it's a push that, you know, if it's going to be a cost-saving thing, then if everybody could know the cost associated to every site, or why is there not land within the city where the infrastructure's already there on Liberty Pike? You know, there's land there, and if the school has the right to go in, and they have trumping power for eminent domain for a needed place, why cannot that be executed and put forth also? So, I mean, we just appreciate everybody trying to work with us, and we hope that you listen to what some of the people are having to say. Okay, thanks, Ben.
Thank you. Anything else? All right. Item number 6, follow-up discussion regarding Eastern Flank Access Road.
We wanted to just have a further discussion on this project. You know, I had some discussion last meeting about this, and wanted to provide some additional information that we've gathered as we've looked at some recent cost estimates and bids that we've received that may give us a different view of what this may cost us, but also broach a subject that came up at the Capital Investment Committee meeting last week, which is the potential of looking at this as a design-build project as well. So David has worked with various staff to gather some different issues and some different questions we may need to ask ourselves and answer as we go through this, and look at what some of the considerations are as we develop the framework for how this project goes forward. We've got the opportunity to do design-build, which might present some savings opportunities and some ways to solve this as we move forward. There's also been discussion about folks who may be able to partner with in doing the project and how we approach that going forward. So this is really just designed to get some more information out to you and help have a little more discussion about how we move forward. David, do you want to describe some of the issues?
Well, I hope everyone has had an opportunity to read the memo I put out, sent to you this morning, and then put in your box also. As you'll see from the attachment, there are multiple options that can be looked at as far as what is built and the costs that each of those items are associated with that. I do want to point out that what we provided costs for is just the eastern roadway. It is not the western, which has been discussed as probably doing a grading and gravel only. We did not include that in the costing at this point. We do not, staff does not recommend that unless you're going on and finish that you look at doing something like that for temporary use, because you end up having to go back and completely rebuilding it later. If it's like a year or two later, you're going to end up having to basically rebuild that. So, but these costs are to provide the roadway going into the park. It would go up to the asphalt that is now in place there at the tennis courts. It would provide the turnaround area there at Fleming Center. It also includes the cost based on the planning for the sidewalks. If you're going to have this access, you're going to need sidewalks, ADA accessibility, etc. So this is what we've done as far as trying to cost. We did look at the various options that have been discussed as far as asphalt with exposed aggregate, concrete with exposed aggregate, and then also the double bituminous surface treatment. I think at your last meeting, my understanding from the last meeting, it was discussed if we have enough money, we do the parking too. I think it's kind of obvious based on what we've been looking at as far as if there's only $300,000, or if we fund $300,000, we won't have any money left for the parking right there close to the Fleming Center, I think.
Fleming Center.
Yeah. So But what we've, as I said, we've got some cost in here, and I'm more than happy to try to explain it if you don't understand what we've done. We provided options for the ribbon curb or without a ribbon curb. The ribbon curb is if you just picture what we have in alleys right now, that is a ribbon curb along the asphalt. It is flush with the surface of the asphalt. What it's there for is protection of the edges of the asphalt. When you start having just asphalt running out there without any kind of concrete, et cetera, it breaks off because cars or whatever are running over it and it starts breaking off, and then you have the maintenance problem. So we have looked at this, and that is your standard for an alley. When you have alleys in the city of Franklin right now, is with this, what we call a ribbon curb. It is not a curb and gutter. It is like a 6-inch wide. You could have it wider if you want to, and 12 inches or so deep, just to protect the asphalt surface. We think it's important to do something like that because we are trying to be a sustainable city. We're trying to make sure that we build stuff that lasts for a long time, and this will help us do that. Ma'am?
I was wondering if that's what they used to call a mountable curb, but from what you're saying, it's not, is it?
No, ma'am. Mountable curb is still 6 inches high, and it goes up. Mountable curb is basically what you have at Harlansdale.
A ribbon curb goes on after the pavement, on top of the pavement, as it's done to protect the edges. Now, you know, they don't do county roads with the ribbon. I mean, there's lots of roads. My road on Glass Lane doesn't have it's just repaved. There's lots of roads in the city and outside, and hundreds of miles outside the city that are paved without ribbon curbs on. So again, that's an issue, a discussion that we could have, which again, in my opinion, there's a couple of reasons why this needs to go the way that we've talked about, is that, you know, if tonight which I think we may get as a motion to approve up to $300,000, that's sort of the recommendation, we see that there's maybe more costs in here. Well, there are numerous organizations that are interested in this road and helping this road get built. And so having input from those organizations, meeting with a design build contractor to talk about the different options is really how this needs to be done. There's also, you know, there may be some people who might be willing to do some in-kind services, and again, that could lay in better with a design build contractor because there's just more flexibility in doing that. And so that's kind of why we're here. This will move it along further. It does show that, you know, we've got some more costs here than we like to look at, but I think this is the first step, and there's a lot more information to be provided by not only our staff, but by, you know, and we need to remember that right now, the only, you know, the servicing of this, the purpose of this road, in essence today, since we haven't done anything with the Eastern Flank Battlefield Park, is to help reduce traffic on Carton Lane that services the Carton Plantation. So, you know, we need to understand what their traffic flows are, what their traffic patterns are. Could there be involvement from Carton Plantation in this as well? And, you know, so there's lots of conversations left to be had. I think just what we can do tonight can move this forward. And with a design build contractor, they can be part of those conversations. And I think that's what's the important part of this particular project.
Okay.
Any questions, Mark?
Yeah, what the Battlefield Task Force had recommended would be, because of cost constraints, that we do that portion on the western side in gravel, so that as soon as we got additional money, we could go ahead and finish that out. Now, it's encouraging with this design build concept that there's been a lot of interest in this, and just the other day, I've heard somebody estimate that they think it could be done between $300,000 and $400,000 for the entire project. Now, if we can get the entire project that kind of follows the historical plan that we had in the first place for the loop, I think it would be foolish to bypass that for this kind of savings within the financial situation we have now where some companies are willing to make some real sacrifices to get this done, instead of piecemealing it in and trying to get more done at a later date. And I can see assistance for things like parking lots, amenities, interpretive areas that we can get a lot of assistance from the different groups that will help with the interpretation of the park too. I think they're better set up for that kind of situation. But I would hate for us to limit us on how we look at this, because a lot depends on the width, on whether it's one way or two way. So if we can get the whole thing done for one way, we don't have to have the width and this ribbon curb. It's a driveway. There's going to be traffic out there, but it's not going to be, other than special occasions where there'll be a lot of people, it's not going to be a constant. There's not going to be semis continually running through there. There are things that we can bypass. I don't think we have to have survey costs. This is all in the middle of city property. The archaeology.
Well, you have to survey the road in order to figure out the grades and the drainage and all those kinds. You just can't go out there and put gravel down and put a road down. But
well, I know we've got to grade and do those things, but I think there's a lot of ways that we can economize this, still get a good product, get the basis of what the park is going to be based on, and move on with this. And I would hate for us to do this on a cheap by underselling this by just a little bit, and with a little bit more, we could perhaps get the whole thing done.
well, I think the point at this point in time is we don't know. I mean, that's beyond where we are at this moment.
Well, if we do this design bid, we'll know.
We'll have 100 options available to us.
What I would like
kind of like what we saw last night.
I don't know what the process is for us to put out is it RFP for design bid, or what would that be?
Yeah.
RFQ.
Qualification
It's like a professional services RFQ.
Could we sit down with Parks and some representatives from the commission, the Battlefield Commission, and get some real exact, on this, and look at the side of the road and those.
I think that's what we'll do once we go to the other step. We just can't do that now. There's no point in doing it until we get somebody on board. I think the purpose today is to say, is everybody pretty much on board with David doing an RFQ for design build, letting staff pick that recommendation, which is what they're allowed to do. They'll bring it to us for final approval, and then that's when we start having those discussions and meetings.
Okay. But I don't want to tie us down to one of the plans in case.
That's not.
Well, I think I noticed in the resolution that it was going to say the particular option
make the resolution however you want to make.
Okay.
The option 4
if it passes, it passes. If it doesn't, it's just
there's a whole paragraph, but not under that. So
that's the prerogative of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen to make that resolution, and if they vote on it, and pass it, then it is such.
And I think we were trying to reflect what was brought to you last meeting as the recommendation, but that's up to you how you want to do it. And you may want to just identify a funding level at this point and work with options.
I think that'd probably be better. That way we'd have options.
Well, that's kind of what it says, isn't it, a funding level?
That's kind of what I thought we'd be at. And again, look, I don't want to put words in the alderman's mouth, but if we do all this and the number comes at $350,000, I'm sure that we would bring this back and say, are you interested in this? And that's up to us to make that decision. And there's that doesn't mean that no matter what, nothing will change, but we got to get started, and at least I think we do, and this is how we do it, basically. David, thank you. Item number 7, report of emergency. You may.
So, I'm Mindy Tate, I live at 1115 Carton Lane, and I live at the edge of Carton Lane, the end of Carton Lane. experience daily the people going to Carton who turn into the wrong side of the one-way street, and we, live through that, and he does it too. But
It's easy to do.
the residents, Lisa Clayton did a great job of hosting a meeting and explaining to the residents the options. I just want the residents, whether it's Carriage Park or Carton Lane and Heath Place subdivision, to have as much say in what happens as the Battlefield Task Force. This impacts our lives as well. If you put a gravel road, while it's several hundred feet away from our homes, if you put a gravel road there and it's used frequently, there will be impact on our lives, and we would feel that. The people in Carriage Park expressed concern about parking and the lights being in their backyards. So we are concerned about this, but we know that it will also enhance our life by taking this traffic off of Carton Lane. For the Heath Place residents, we know that. And we would not want to, in any way, not want to see great surveys or work done in that way because of the significant flooding situation which already exists on the Battlefield Park and in our subdivision. As you know, the Heath Place residents were trapped in our subdivision until Tuesday morning with no way in or out. Most of them are okay with that.
It's another issue.
Fine with that. But it's not, we wouldn't want to do anything that made that situation worse by not researching a road. But please let the residents have as much to say as the Battlefield Task Force.
Well, I'm sure we will. Thank you.
Sure we will.
Item number 7, report of emergency purchase of a reconditioned, let's see,
There's a pronunciation guide in
It was, but I couldn't even, communotor.
It's a big cheer-upper.
Communist. Reconditioned communist to replace a failed unit for the Water Reclamation Facility Division of the Water.
It's a big grinder.
That's a first.
Help him, Carol.
That's a first.
We purchased one several years ago. I practiced that.
There you go.
All right, tell us about it. What is this thing?
We've already ordered it, it's got underwater. Now, I guess my question will be, you mentioned, is there insurance capabilities on recovery?
We've submitted a claim through RISC, and we'll see how that works out.
All right.
Thanks, appreciate
I have
it.
a question on that. Is that, that's number 25 on our, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, okay, so, what was the question? 25,000, but it was a reconditioned one.
Yes, ma'am.
And the thing is, actually, the insurance on that, is that a performance warranty that's on that? And then
There's a warranty from the company on the equipment, and the warranty was similar to that of a new unit, which
yeah, it said it was
about
the same.
$60,000.
So what does that cover? Like a year, 2 years, 3 years? Is
I don't have
Is
the
it about the
specifics.
same as a new one, though?
It's the same as the new one,
It
yes,
is?
ma'am. So
It looked like you
we
said-
figured it was worth going with recondition one. We've had a recondition one in there previously, and it worked and performed as well as the newer ones.
And
so-
sometimes that reconditioned one, then the warranty allows us to replace that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's all I know.
All right, thank you. Item number 8, consideration of ordinance 2010-54, an ordinance amending the City of Franklin Municipal Code Title 9, Chapter 8, relative to the registration, antique, used, and scrap jewelry and precious stone and metal dealers.
Oh, what are you doing?
Speaking of precious stone,
That was a good one.
He's on the road. You've been practicing on your commentator, haven't you?
getting good on that one.
Well, our municipal code currently provides for certain registration requirements for dealers of scrap metal, antique, jewelry, and precious stones. Our code actually, up until last year, mirrored the state law practically exactly, with the only thing that it left out is saying that county sheriffs also have to be responsible for keeping tabs on these dealers, because the state law does require that all these dealers must register with the chief of police in every city and the sheriffs of every county. Last year, the state legislature modified this portion of the code just slightly And all we're doing is just adopting that modification, just to bring ours exactly in line with the state law.
And the modification, I think, deals with dealer-to-dealer
Yes,
transactions.
that's exactly right. What that does is if the selling dealer, when there's a transaction between two dealers of this, when the selling dealer has already complied with the registration requirements, then there's no reason for that deal itself and those dealers to register separately. So I know it's kind of, but it's just adopting the state law. So.
And why is there a state law that says you have to register with the?
Because there just is.
For what?
You know, you could go down at TCS code book, how many volumes are there, like 45 of them?
Is it so that
Why are
it's
they?
stolen gold that they'll know who to go ask if they've seen
It
it?
always has to do with crime.
Okay, I'm good.
Provide some oversight.
That's probably about 90%.
Thank you. Item number 9, consideration of resolution 2010-30, resolution to establish a sustainable building policy for the City of Franklin Municipal Code, continued from 6/8/10. Vernon!
Oui.
How are you, buddy?
It's wonderful to be back.
I love America.
But it's also interesting to travel to see how other people live, and certainly the history that comes along with a place like many of those European countries have to offer. And we're very fortunate. And it's good to hear that we're rated one of the 66
places in the world.
best places to live.
You thought he heard it while he was in Europe.
It's on a billboard.
I do want to say, before we digress slightly, but we are truly, as Linnea said yesterday, we're truly global, because yesterday Vernon sent Mary Ann an email to register for the county, Rogers Anderson Estate of the county address next Tuesday. And Mary Ann is in Italy, and so she got the email in Italy and then emailed it to Linnea here. So it went from wherever you were in Europe to Italy to here. So in technology.
It is wonderful. But anyway,
Go to that too.
Same, anybody want to go that hasn't registered? Stay in the county next week.
I'm going to turn this over to Andrew, but the Sustainability Commission has been working on any number of initiatives regarding the municipal action plan as well as our community sustainability action plan. And one of those initiatives that's in the action plan is for the city taking a lead when we build or renovate future buildings, that they meet some type of efficiency standard, and the most well-known one is the LEED certification. But as Alderman Moore had laid out, for the city to pursue sustainability best practices is that they must be cost-effective for us to do those things. And the Sustainability Commission, I know, deliberated on that, came up with one recommendation, and staff looked critically at it and revised that recommendation a little bit to give us the option to look critically at particular projects to make sure that there is a cost benefit to that. And I'll let Andrew elaborate a little bit further.
The most recent effort from the Sustainability Commission is essentially a continuation of what began 2 years ago through the visioning process and the community engagement. LEED is really starting to take hold. 7 years ago, it wasn't on anyone's radar here. I've talked to business owners, one in particular who wanted to do LEED 7 years ago in Franklin, and she couldn't find an architect who knew what it was, nor did the health department want her to install water-efficient plumbing fixtures. They said that was against public health policy. So we've really come a long way in those 7 years. And what we really want to do is make LEED Silver the goal for new renovation projects, new construction projects, just for City of Franklin municipal operations. We're not talking about the private sector, just to be clear on that. But we want it to make sense. LEED really hits at the triple bottom line. It's financially beneficial to do it. It's good for the people who use the building, and it typically leaves the site in better condition than it was previously. So the two resolutions that we have before us, I'll go over them briefly. Resolution A was endorsed by the Sustainability Commission in April. It basically states that for any municipal project exceeding 5,000 square feet, we're going to shoot for LEED Silver. For renovations, if it's not within the best interest of the city for whatever reason, maybe it'd be detrimental to a historic structure, we'll opt out of LEED. For new construction, if it's not financially feasible or cost effective, we'll drop down from LEED Silver to the bottom level LEED certification. And after conversations with people in-house and professionals, that's not very difficult to obtain. But to allay any concerns with the fiscal impact, Resolution B was created that says, hey, for facilities over 5,000 square feet, we're going to shoot for LEED Silver. So new renovation projects, new construction projects, we'll shoot for LEED Silver. But if it's not within the best interest of the city, the board can request cost-benefit analysis to be done, or can opt out if it's just not practical. We don't want to build a LEED certified storage shed for the most part. So those are the two alternatives, and at this point we're looking for feedback, and staff recommends Resolution B, and it lies within the spirit of what's outlined in the Sustainable Community Action Plan as well as the Municipal Services Action Plan.
I've got a comment. Ken, do you want to go first, since this is your, why don't you go first?
Well, I'd love to go first if you'd allow me to. We've been looking at this for a couple of years, actually, and it finally got to the commission level, and the commission batted it around quite a bit, and one of the things they discussed very heavily was that why not just take it up to this particular LEED level, but not go through the certification process. And we discussed that quite a bit, and my comment about that was we have two levels of doctors. We have board eligible, we have board certified, and I think we all would prefer a board certified because we know what we're getting versus somebody that's maybe just gone through the training. The other thing that we're finding, and I think it's an important lead from the private sector, is that the private sector is finding that if they build buildings that are not LEED certified, they're pretty obsolete. They're not renting is the word I'm getting, and I know that we had one presentation from a group of, from a developer who is taking over a number of buildings and bringing them up to LEED standard. I don't have any problems with us looking at a cost-benefit analysis. I think that's just smart business for our city to make sure. But I think it is important for the city to continue to lead, and I think that's LEAD. But this, I think it's important also for us to set the example as we go forward, trying to be a sustainable city for the rest of the community.
That leads into what I was going to say. Well, first of all, I've had discussions about the 5,000 square feet and the renovated, and I think we're moving in the right direction. So I certainly am in favor of the direction the Resolution B took over Resolution A. I still have some issues with the actual certification requirement, and I agree with what the people said in your committee or in the commission, in that in for lease multiple tenant spaces, that tenants oftentimes they themselves have requirements within their own guidelines to only lease space in buildings that are LEED certified. And so that goes back to their own sustainable programs that they have in nature. But we're not that. We're not going to lease to anybody else. We're not going to sell these buildings to anybody, I don't think. Nissan is another classic example. Nissan is a building, that building is as sustainable probably as any building built in the city of Franklin, or maybe in the state of Tennessee, quite frankly. They saw no economic purpose of getting a certification. Now, they've gone through all the things they needed to do that, but they've saved the effort and the dollars that it went to get that. And the reason being is they're not going to sell that building. They're going to be there. They're not going to lease to anybody else. So there is a market force that drives to LEED certification for multiple tenant spaces. We don't have that market force. Now, I'm not saying, I just think that we really need to look at it, and we can say we're going to build this as if it were a LEED certified building. It would meet all the parameters of it, but we won't go to the next step to get that because it may cost a percentage of the building, and that percentage of the building really has, the only thing it would have to us is that we could say we have a LEED certified building. Now, there may be some merit to that, and I don't want to discount that. I'm just thinking that I think that option B allows us to do that, but I want to go on record that I want to look at all of that economically to make sure that there is a reason to do that. Margaret? Right.
If you've done all the work to make it LEED certified, what is the cost? Tell me.
I think it's individual on each building.
Yeah,
but there is a number.
There's a certification process.
Who are you paying the money?
The LEED people.
Yeah. If you've done all the work.
You have to do certain certification by your professionals involved, as well as working with the Green Building Council. So I think cost comes in two different places. You got to do all the things to document what you did, to basically validate that you're sustainable.
We wouldn't do that anyway if we were working to.
Not to the level that they require to do.
See, that's
a lot of expense and work.
This is the good
And
example.
look, we may look at it, and I think the point is that the option B allows us to look at that and make a decision, and allows further boards to look at it and make that decision. 10 years from now, LEED may be out the window, maybe something else, some other thing. And so we don't even know what that might be.
Might be fall.
That's right.
Might be a commoner.
A communist, there we go. A commoner. That's different. But I don't want to tie our hands where we'd have to go back and change a policy, because if we find out it costs $100,000, let's say we do City Hall as an example, and it costs $100,000 more to get certification than it did if we didn't, but we did everything exactly the same, I would tell you, I would probably vote not to do it. Now, if it's $5,000, I'd probably say that's probably worth $5,000. So I think we need to look at every project in and of itself and have the merits of it. And I think option B allows us to.
Now, that is my question. Does option B allow us to do that? Because it very honestly says there be resolved that we will shall meet this. And then the next one says, be it further resolved that.
Well, I want to make sure that it does.
Well, okay, if you.
And I'm not positive that it does.
Because if it says shall there, to me.
It should say may.
I think it's a good example. This is a baby step for our community. We've been taking baby steps to be a sustainable community, and this is one more baby step. And I think we'll find going forward, based on the information we're getting, is that we'll be happy we do have certification in the future. So, and I think that we can opt in or opt out at that point in time.
Well, that was my concern, though, because it said shall.
Clean up the language.
That to me means you don't have any choice.
I personally would like to see it as a may than shall, personally.
If that's acceptable, that suits me also.
Y'all can vote however you want to vote.
That's the same name.
Your doctor may be board certified.
There's a big difference in me going into surgery with a doctor than whether my building is or isn't, personally.
Again, before we vote on this, I'd like to have an opinion on whether it says shall.
Yeah.
If that means that there is no, you have no choice.
Shall or may, we know. Yeah. Yes.
Amazing.
I think we all know.
Kind of like is. Right.
Say like, what are you all on tonight? Gee.
I had a nap at lunch.
The Sustainability Commission found it important to follow through with the certification. So it's basically the third-party verification to make sure all your systems are running properly. It's more than just the plaque on the wall. And from conversations with Nissan, because I wondered the same thing, you've got this world-class building, why don't you certify it? Well, the truth of the matter is that building is almost 5 times larger square footage-wise than the police station. So the larger the building, the more expensive it is for me to certify. Also, they've got expert engineers that work for Nissan that can come in and verify that all the systems are running. So those were the primary
Maybe we'll
reasons.
borrow those engineers.
Your point's well taken.
I think each board ought to have the ability to make that decision.
Yeah.
And I don't want to tie the hands of future boards. I think I like the word may rather than shall, and personally, and I think that still says we look at it economically. I think that was the original intent of feasibility and sustainability, and I think we should continue with that. Mr. Ken?
If I could, like...
You may. You gotta come sit up here and talk.
Okay.
Don't start till you sit down. All right, and your name is?
Ken Scow.
There you go.
I'm the chair of the Sustainability Commission. And formerly I worked for the state of Tennessee and had this same issue with the state of Tennessee. The state of Tennessee came up with its own sustainability design guidelines, which were a variation of LEED. In my experience, what has happened is without the third-party verification is that, and the Corps of Engineers has done this also, the Corps of Engineers at one point had said, we will make buildings LEED certifiable, which means they would actually pay the $750, register the project with the USGBC, and then run it through the process, but never pull the trigger to get the certification. Well, what happens is if there's, it depends on your design team, who you've hired to do your project, but things fall through the cracks. Things don't get followed up on. Commissioning is a huge part of a sustainable building. If you don't, and the Nissan building was not commissioned, but as Andrew said, they had qualified engineers at the plant in Smyrna that know a lot about building systems to come and do that. We don't have those capacities here at the city. And if you don't commission a building, then you're not sure that all the equipment is tuned up properly, communicating to each component, and saving the money in operational dollars that you were told you were going to save when you did the energy model. So I think the certification is an important part of the process because it ensures that everybody follows the rules and that they're checked and they know that in the end that they've done everything they can. Now, because you have a LEED certified building does not mean that the building will not migrate over time, but also the USGBC has now required that operational data be submitted to them after 12 months. That way you know that after that building is substantially complete in 12 months, that it is saving the energy that you were told it was going to save. So I just wanted to kind of put that into this because it is an investment in the building, but it is an investment that you will save, and it's been proven in a lot of business cases.
Thank you, Ken. Appreciate it.
How long do those investigations last? I mean, if you check them in 12 months and everything's okay and moving right along, is there another period of time that you need to come back and be sure it's still working?
That's called retro commissioning, where you would come back and check the systems on and on. It should happen on an ongoing basis, especially if it's a highly technical facility, a facility that uses a lot of energy. And
is that included in that price you pay for certification?
No, ma'am.
That's a month. That's a yearly fee.
Oh,
No, that is something that you would normally engage a third party to do, and it's completely separate.
And there's no reason that we can't do that anyway.
Right.
And we should do that, and we do that. We maintain and we will make sure, if the police station, which is certified, but if it didn't, shame on us if we don't maintain that facility in the exact way that we should, whether we were required to do it to keep LEED certification or not. I mean, that's our obligation. And it's our fiduciary responsibility to do that. I mean, if you own a home, you should maintain it the way, you've got requirements on all of your equipment, just like your car. I mean, you're supposed to go get your oil changed every so often, so. But the point is, personally, I would just like to look at every building, and we're really, how many buildings does the city build and renovate anyway, quite frankly? And so it's not going to be a discussion that we have every week. It will be every so often, so. All right, thank you, Ken, appreciate it. Thank you, Andrew. Item number 10, consideration of the bid award to Component Fabricators, DBA Legends Fitness of Maynardville. Now, you don't have to come up here unless we call you. Maynardville, Tennessee, in the amount of $30,150 for supply, delivery, and installation of fitness equipment for the police department. This is finally here. It's been deferred forever. Anybody have any questions of Chief Moore? Thank you, Chief.
Get it installed.
Item number 11. Consideration of ordinance 2010-51, an ordinance amending section 12-108 of the City of Franklin Municipal Code, Title 12-Building Utility, etc. codes for the purpose of creating a refund policy for building construction-related permits. Introduce yourself.
I'll introduce. I'm not sure if all of you have met Lawrence Washington, but Lawrence has been a student intern between the law department and Mr. Vernon Gurr and the Community and Economic Development Planning and Sustainability. What Lawrence has been working on, among some other things, is researching the possibility of implementing a building permit refund policy. And with that, I'll let Lawrence take it away.
Good evening, everyone.
Welcome, Lawrence. How are you today?
Good.
I'm going to keep you off track to see how he does that. You're thinking you're going to read something? You're wrong.
We don't bite.
Well, I am a student. Well, I am a student intern here at the City of Franklin, and I attend Tennessee State University. I'm going to my junior year. I'm going into law. I'm actually a pre-law student at Tennessee State. I met Pearl Bransford through my mom, Sheila Washington, and I told Pearl that I was actually interested in law, and she brought me in, met a few people, brought me to some work sessions. I think they're interesting, despite what everyone else says about them.
Especially that guy that was snoring.
And they introduced me to a few people, like Vernon Gurr, and I've been working with him every day.
Poor guy.
Yeah, everyone says to
Italy?
to produce a building permit refund policy, and he better not snore on me. I know this. I'm going to get through this. Basically, our building permit refund policy, in order to construct, build, or modify anything such as a building, residential or non-residential building, you have to obtain a building permit. And sometimes people obtain these permits and they realize they cannot do it. We don't know why. We don't know the circumstance. It just happens. And to help better serve our citizens of Franklin, Tennessee, we decided to actually give them a chance to get a refund on their on the building permit. Building permits they range from $30 to over $2,000 depending on the price of the home or residential building. And what we did is we actually put limitations to it. Okay, if you want a building permit refund on your permit, you have to submit it in writing and within 90 days. It has to be a written request. No construction or building has not commenced yet, and it cannot be less than a $50 permit. It has to be over $50. We put a $50 price in just for the processing fee that the city can recoup after they get the permit, and that's really it. How I got all this information was I researched other cities in the nation that actually have a refund policy, and I put it in 4 categories: the days allowed before a refund, the processing fee, the percent of refunds, and the no refunds on permits less than, and you guys all have that. So if there's any questions, feel free to ask.
Great job.
Lawrence, I have questions.
Yes,
sir.
Would this, even if there had been multiple inspections made at the site or something,
right,
would we still refund?
The way I learned is that if there's no building or construction that has commenced, then they
Why
can-
would you do an inspection?
If they've already come out and looked and
But
we
they hadn't
put staff
started,
time up
they
there.
hadn't started. There's been no commencement.
No work.
There's no work
Is
there.
is there any reason that they would go out before?
So if you've started the work, then you won't get a refund.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay, and we've got good records that we can bounce that off
Sometimes
of.
we go out just to
Feel the land.
how buildings
Feel the
are built.
Walk around.
Very seldom.
I watched that.
All right, good.
But what kind of cost is involved for
tonight.
a trip like that?
I would say we've done this before, probably about $30 to $50.
We charge
That's walking around money.
It's $75 to do it.
We've learned our lesson on that.
Oh, my God.
Lawrence, we're sorry.
It's going downhill tonight.
Well,
Go
I
ahead.
have some
Go ahead,
questions
Ann.
that don't go along those lines, if you don't mind.
Good.
How often does this happen? And how much total money would be involved if we do start?
I believe we'll ask Mr. Verniger to address.
You should know that.
Right, Brendan, get up here and answer a question. Everybody's leaving.
The first thing, and most importantly, I want to bring up to you is that Lawrence volunteered to come to the city. This isn't a paid position, and it really demonstrates the initiative of a very fine young man to come in, and even his presentation to you this evening, that this is totally volunteering on his own part. And he wanted to have some exposure to how an ordinance gets passed. Alderman Peterson asked how many times this happens. It's rare. But currently, we don't have a policy, and which means we'd have to come to the board for something that's relatively simple. And with the economy the way it is, sometimes people have good intentions and don't go forward. We don't have an exact number, but we thought this was a good time to put something in place that we wouldn't have to bring something to yourselves to get approval to provide a refund, and also give Lawrence an opportunity to work through an ordinance and present something to
I think it's a
yourself.
wonderful idea.
It is.
And I congratulate you on your courage to be here tonight.
Especially to come before this. It makes me nervous.
Something's in the air tonight.
Well, here's another one.
He's got one more to do, too. Go ahead, Ann.
I would like to have some numbers on it, though.
We don't, we haven't had many refunds. We've had some requests, but many of them have come after a year or so, and we haven't had a policy and haven't allowed them to come.
We've had many requests, we should have had no refunds.
That's right.
Because
Because
they have
But you have no refund policy.
And then because we didn't have a policy, and they were very much extended, and as Lawrence was able to demonstrate that some communities go a half a year or even more, a year for a refund, and after discussion and deciding what was reasonable, thought that 90 days would be a good refund period, providing there weren't any activity on that permit. And I'm sorry, we don't have any numbers on, so something we haven't given any
And
refunds
the
to.
other question is, does anyone in Tennessee have it? I noticed that the two cities that you researched, Brentwood and Metro,
They
did
do not have
not.
one, right. I researched a lot of cities, and I didn't see a lot of, no cities in Tennessee that actually have a building permit.
We can be on the cutting edge.
It's a great idea. I like the idea very much.
Okay, let's go on item 12.
It's basically
Kind
the
of
same thing.
thing.
Yeah, same thing I kind of discussed. It's just a $50 fee that we're trying to get for the recoup the cost, so.
Which is why you got a $50 minimum.
Right.
Okay.
Unless you want, if you had a $30 permit, if you really want to get a sorry note from the city saying you can't get your $20 back, then you can go ahead and do that, but, yeah.
I can't. You can come up, see, you're already kind of tainted.
That's a good word.
Thank you so much, and
Drop it 50.
appreciate you coming.
Thank you, Lawrence. Thank you.
And now law department, look out for them.
Okay. Item number 13, consideration of bid award to Geneva LLC, DBA Nixon Power Services of Nashville in the amount of $51,747.08 for supply, delivery, and installation of transfer switch gear for a portable generator for the Water Reclamation Facility Division of the Water Management Department. Mr. Elton.
Yes, sir.
But let's ask, anybody have any questions?
No.
Now, Ray, does this not, you have to amend the budget for this, though, so it is
Yes, ma'am.
outside the budget
It
amount?
is, yes. Any other questions?
We may have to amend the budget. I mean, it's in a broader category of expenditure. This item may be over, but others could be under.
There are purchases that we have not made in this.
So as a whole, we may or may not have to amend. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Item number 14, Resolution 2010-53, a resolution approving a concept plan for the Franklin Housing Authority, Granbury and Straw Street Development, PUD subdivision, 114 dwelling units, and 3,007 square feet of non-residential space on 8.84 acres.
And I think the mayor covered most of it. Basically, this is a slightly accelerated schedule as well to work with the Housing Authority to make sure that they're able to construct within a timely manner. As the mayor indicated, it's 114 dwelling units, most of it in a senior housing living facility. There will be 3,700 square feet, and that would be in a community building kind of situation. The Plan Commission did recommend unanimous that we recommend approval to you.
And this was presented to us in our joint work session.
Yes, it
and
was.
accelerated program was presented as well.
That is correct.
Any questions, comments? Ann?
The only thing I would say is that in the existing units, as many inadequacies that they have, the people have yards. And I've been by there so many times whenever there was so much nice color, they had flowers and things like that, and I just, losing that, I think, will be, again, and I understand the inadequacies of the buildings themselves, but it will be a change in their living conditions.
That, to an extent, that's correct, but they will have to provide open space. And what that open space becomes, we're not sure. We don't have the site plan at this point in time, but we certainly will be working with them. They will have to provide some percentage of open space on the property.
Michael, you had a question?
Yeah, part of the features on this plan was that this wouldn't be exclusively public housing, that these would be mixed.
Not on this particular.
Does this particular have that variation?
No.
No.
That's the overall master plan development.
And really, their first phase on this is the senior living. The other housing may come later.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. Item number 15, resolution approving a concept plan for Through the Green PUD subdivision, Shadow Green 264 dwelling units and 125,178 square feet of non-residential space on 43.08 acres located on Columbia Avenue at Shadow Green Drive.
And again, the mayor has covered much of the information. I know that the applicant is here tonight, and I don't. And, we do have some conditions. The applicant is working to resolve those conditions, either at the site plan or regulating plan phase, and it was unanimously recommended for approval.
From the planning?
From the Planning Commission.
Go ahead, if you'd like.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Skip Hebert, landscape architect, and I represent Wolf Development Company for the Shadow Green development. And as Catherine said, we went for the Planning Commission. There were several conditions, and we do agree with all those conditions. The current approved plan has 196 units on the property approved for development. And what we're requesting is, as a result of the affordable housing ordinance that was just recently approved, to add 68 units that would be specifically targeted for workforce housing within the development. The plans that you have before you are for the concept plan. There's not a lot of detail in those, just by the very nature of the requirements for this this proposal. Any additional, the details would be created through subsequent submittals with the Planning Commission if this is approved tonight. The plan is just kind of going over the concept plan. We have 3 drawings. There's a slope analysis on the first page, which is required. You'll notice most of the site is very flat. There's a couple slopes that are in the 14 to 20%, and then just a small portion of it in the greater than 20%. Those primarily are in the creek banks, because the general lay of the land, if you've been out there, is very, very flat. And there's one portion in the southwestern corner of the site that does have some 20% slopes, but that's on the knoll that's on the adjacent property. It's at the foothills of that adjacent property. The second drawing is a concept site plan that shows basically a bubble diagram of what we're proposing and the different type of units that would be going into the site. The 196 units that are approved would be rental housing, and those would be along the western boundary of the site. The 68 workforce housing units would be located in the southwestern corner of the site. The current commercial development up front would not be altered. We're keeping that exactly as it is. We're not asking for any changes in that particular area. The third plan is the tree preservation plan. And the tree preservation plan basically shows the trees we're trying to save. The large mature trees that are on the site are along the creeks and the waterways that go through the site. It is envisioned that we would maintain all of those trees. We would not ask to remove any of that vegetation. There's smaller trees scattered throughout the site that were utilized when it was a golf course. And some of those trees obviously would be coming down due to development. But the creek side developments would be remaining. There is one, the main change we've had since the last time we came before this board in the back is that at one point in time we were planning on putting a culvert for one of the creeks in the southwestern corner of the site. That culvert will not be there anymore. That will be remaining as a creek. So we would have essentially a 65 or 70-foot separation of greenway between the units. That was one of the conditions of the Planning Commission, and we certainly agree with that. We've worked with the planning staff to meet the guidelines of the ordinance, the zoning ordinances, as well as the workforce housing ordinance, and we certainly have tried to comply with all the regulations. We've also had, one of the things that I'd like to point out is this is envisioned to be a walkable community. We have several amenities that are around the site. There's commercial amenities on this site that the residents could walk to on a daily basis, as well as connections, pedestrian access to the adjacent Parkway Commons. So that would hopefully help reduce some of the vehicular trips. We've also had a signal warrant study performed on the site. And just a couple of the items that I'd like to point out on the signal warrant study. I have a copy. If you haven't seen a copy of that, I'd be happy to get a copy to anyone that, if you'll just give me your name, and I'll be happy to get that to you. The main points of the signal warrant study that came out of it is that a signal is going to be recommended on this site very soon. So right now, the traffic that is being experienced out on Columbia Avenue is pretty rough because it's hard to make a left turn, obviously, during rush hour traffic because of the traffic that's out there. Once one or two more sites are developed, actually one commercial site is developed, it will warrant a traffic signal out there. So there will be some relief from some of the traffic as soon as that occurs. The addition of the 68 townhome units that are proposed will result in less than a 4% increase in the total daily traffic volume, which is calculated out to be 460 trips. And the total peak AM and PM traffic will also be increased by only about 4%. And the total peak AM traffic and PM traffic totals 82 trips. We've tried to revise the plan to address some of the concerns of the planning staff and of this board on some of the areas on the western part of the site. Obviously, the Franklin transfer facility and the City of Franklin has some facilities in the back of the site, which is on the western boundary. It includes the police firing range as well as the transfer station. We've tried to address some of those concerns. One is the sound wall and the visual barrier wall that was proposed originally would remain intact. That would not be changed at all. That would still be placed. And in trying to visually buffer the site, that will help a little bit. But I would encourage, if you haven't been on the site in this particular area, it's been mowed, it is accessible, probably with four-wheel drive. I wouldn't go out there with just two-wheel drive, but four-wheel drive is certainly accessible. And
I stopped on the pavement.
and I would certainly offer, if you don't have access to four-wheel vehicle, give me a call. I'll be happy to have a four-wheel drive truck, and I'll be happy to take you on the site to show you the area. The area in the back there, once you get out there, the transfer station is visible, but barely visible. We have mature trees along that western boundary. We plan on keeping all of those trees, not touching any of those. And the transfer station is not visible at all. Noise from the transfer station is not an issue. The loudest noise that you have out there, the beeping of the trucks when they're backing up, the commercial trucks. The noise from the firing range, when the firing range is being used, obviously you're going to hear the noise from that firing range. I was out there the other day, during the day, while the firing range was being used, and with the windows rolled up in the vehicle, we could not hear the shots being fired. Obviously, when you roll the windows down, you can, but during the day, you really can't. It would be, I would say, that would simulate the conditions of being inside a home when the shots are being used, or the firing range being used. You would not hear those shots. If you went outdoors, you obviously would hear those shots. The previously approved plan had 6 buildings that were located along that western boundary, and those 6 buildings were about 85 feet from the property line. Now, the redesigned site that you have before, well, the one that you saw at the previous work session, it's not in this package here, but the revised site, the buildings are separated by 150 feet. We were able to pull them back further by changing the configuration of the parking, as well as we've reduced the number of buildings from 6 buildings down to 3 buildings. So we tried to be sensitive to that from that respect. In addition, one of the questions was raised at the last workshop was the height of the units. The rental units are envisioned to be between 2 and 3 stories. That has not been determined yet, but due to the proximity of the western boundary and the sensitivity of the visual look being up in the air, we would restrict those units to being 2-story units, and they would not be 3-story units. So that would help with the visual impact on the western end. And in summary, we certainly acknowledge this site is not without its limitations, but do feel that it provides a very acceptable location for not only the previously approved rental units, but also the addition of the 68 workforce housing units. The workforce housing units that we're proposing will fulfill a need that we think is very real in the city of Franklin for a lot of working people to have the opportunity to purchase a piece of property, to buy a house or a condominium unit, a townhome unit. A lot of those employees are going to be city employees or younger residents. The target market that the price points are geared towards would be for someone making between low 40s, maybe 41, 42,000 per year, up to mid 50s, 53 to 55,000 per year. And we feel that certainly touches the salary ranges of a lot of the city employees that are here. With that, we hope that those folks will have an opportunity to buy properties. Not everyone has a salary, the minimum salary that we've calculated out to buy an average home in Franklin, and this was as per last year's numbers. It's not the latest numbers, or the numbers that are not out for 2010. But the salary needed to buy an average home in the city of Franklin is $131,000. The average home in Franklin is $458,000.
Well, now, wait just a minute. I've just seen the median price be much less than that.
Well, this is based upon get these numbers here.
Probably new.
It may be more recent data. The
It could be heard it's 271,000. That's what I heard too. I don't know where that came from.
I can provide those numbers too that we used for that. But we feel that, nevertheless, the average, the median price is much greater than the salary of a lot of people that would like to purchase a home in the
What's
city.
going to be the price point on
The condominium townhomes would be, the townhomes are going to be ranged from $169,000 to $199,000.
You ready for questions?
Yes.
All right. I had those up too. And those up too. It all comes down to the vote. Whatever happens will happen here on this board. I'm not particularly trying to be adamant about swaying you one way or the other, really. I just want you to think about some things, because when I voted for this development in 2007, I felt afterwards that I was very unsure of that vote, and that is one of 2, maybe 3 votes in 5 years that I would take back if I had the opportunity. I don't believe residential belongs here. And I had to really ask myself over and over and over again why I did not believe residential belonged here. And I drove the property. I took my four-wheel drive out there, and I drove the property. Had fun. It is a pretty piece of property, but I've also taken I've talked to 3 families. I've taken 2 families out there to look at the property that presently live in Spring Hill and Thompson Station. One's a teacher, one's a teacher aide. Their salaries are very low. They don't have only one spouse is working, the other one's staying home with the children. I've asked them what they thought of the property, got their input as well. I put some thoughts together here. I just want you to read over these things, but first of all, there are numerous issues with this location, the piece of property in relationship to residential housing. But the facts are, the location off Columbia Avenue still adds additional traffic to a bottleneck that exists in a roadway that's not going to be widened there. We have a rock quarry located within a relatively close distance. They blast at least twice a day at 12 noon, around 3 and 4 o'clock again. We also have Williamson County Ready Mix Concrete Company. It's located at the end of Century Court. They blast twice a week. Here, let me give you this information too. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Rock quarry is located within a relatively close distance. They blast, the Ready Mix Company is located at the end of Century Court. And they blast about once a week or twice a week, and it shakes the whole area. And I'm told that there's areas over there on Miller Drive where the concrete's already cracked. If you're renting an apartment, it's a responsibility to repair that damage to the owner of the apartment. And no, it's not a good thing regardless of who owns that property as well. Somebody's going to have to fix it. But if you own a condo or a townhome, you're responsible party to replace or to repair any damage from the blasting. Certainly not an easy thing to prove sometimes and get the blasting company to help you with the damage, but it's a continuous, ongoing thing. Blasting is going to continue, it's going to continue, it's going to happen, and it's going to be over and over. The fire tower is located right behind the development. A considerable amount of smoke is emitted from this tower when there's firemen training out there due to excess smoke at one time. And the direction of the wind, they had to evacuate Century Court area for at the solid waste in the past. The police firing range is located behind the development, and the noise from the range can be heard far and wide at times. This range is accessible 24 hours, and numerous officers practice there at all hours of every day. And remember, we also have a shift from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. Once people move into the apartments and condos, and this is a grave concern of mine, they will complain about the noise, and we will have to enforce our own noise ordinance. We will have to enforce that. In all reality, this could require no use of the shoot house if the decibel is over 50, even during the day, since it would be classified as a nuisance. We currently make provisions for other agencies, including the FBI and Brentwood and other municipalities, to use our shoot house during the 24 hours availability. In addition, we host qualifying courses at our facility, and in fact, we'll be hosting such a course here in the fall. Currently, we do not charge for these uses of the facilities as we try to reciprocate through mutual services with other agencies, but we do have some opportunities in the future to realize revenue from some of these uses. These opportunities would be blocked if we must impose a noise ordinance. Another important factor is we need to be aware that there are certain fire training courses that are held, training courses that are held at night and after dark hours for low light training of our officers. We're required to have these officers train and practice in a low light setting. If not, and there's an incident, there's a shooting at night, and we are in court, we have to document that low light training is being done with our officers. Then we go to the solid waste facility. It's located behind this proposed development. I don't know where I start with this because there's so many issues with that. We have invested a lot of money in the solid waste facility. The odor is an obvious #1 issue, especially between the summer months and May to October. Noise, again, is a factor here. Trucks roll out of there at 4 a.m. Some of these go out to commercial sites like the mall, where there are no housing around those areas, so they don't disturb residents at 4 and 5 a.m. in the morning. Some of the trucks come back as late as 6 p.m. at night. There's hazardous waste, gets picked up and dumped by the trucks on occasion, and this is a concern of mine. These are things I wished I had thought about when I first voted for this in 2007. In the past, we've had muric acid come in on one truck, and when the load was dumped, the solid waste facility had to be evacuated. In June 2005, there was a fire in the truck shed at the solid waste area that had to be evacuated, and there was a tremendous amount of traffic tie-up on Century Court, since there's no other access to that or available for evacuation. Trying to get a fire apparatus in and out of there along with the Sheriff's Department shifts was a major problem at that time. And there's only one way in and one way out through to Columbia Avenue. Back in 2006, we had all discussed that the city purchasing this exact piece of property for future use and consolidation. I was real new on the board at the time, and therefore I didn't have the entire history. However, another board member mentioned that the city had just acquired the Franklin Country Club, the Battlefield property, and Harlansdale Farm. So these large expenditures would preclude any discussion related to the city purchasing any additional land at that time. Time and hindsight bring a lot of understanding and insight. I'm now wondering, and I'm concerned about the one-way in and the one-way out of Century Court for their occupants there. Do we actually realize that we have along that street, in that back area, especially the solid waste facility that emits the odor, has the potential of challenging of toxic waste that comes in there possibly at times, evacuation of the area, noise from large industrial-sized trucks in early morning and all day long. Concrete company that blasts twice a week, a major county jail facility, a fire tower that's been set on fire at time for training and emits smoke, the firing range and shoot house that operates can operate 24 hours a day, the county sheriff's department, a private trash and garbage company. We drove up and down there, a recycling facility, a Bales Bonds office, a diesel mechanic shop, body shop, plumbing companies, cabinet shop, and a golf cart company. Those are just a few. The companies I've mentioned all contribute to truck traffic and noise and potential additional risk factors. All this activity suggests that in this area is truly, to me, an industrial area. If this land does not get developed at some point and comes available in the future, I would strongly recommend, again, that we not close our eyes and get wet feet, but we truly look at doing a feasibility study, see if this portion of land might serve the city's future needs, and actually consolidating our solid waste, our public works. We have fleet maintenance that's up on a hill, it's further away. We have compost facility, it's harder to get to. We have waste management, water management, parks. We have other things to consider. That once Goose Creek opens and is developed, then our Century Court area will more than likely be more a centralized portion of Franklin. In addition, Southeast Parkway to me should have been studied as a possible extension into Columbia Avenue to give our departments and our businesses on the dead end of Century Court another access point due to the nature of the volatile operations in that compacted area. I've tried to be as brief as possible to let you know those were my concerns.
Well, thank you for that. I'd like to see what happened if you weren't.
That's why I wrote it down, so we would go through it very quickly. But if I had that information in front of me and I had taken the time to study that in 2007, I would have voted against it. And I just want everyone here to consider those issues. And the two families that I took over there said that they would prefer to stay in Spring Hill and not be subjected to the industrial area. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Go ahead. I just had a question. Did I read this incorrectly? There is a connector to Century Court?
No, there is not at this time. This would provide a connector.
There will be. That's what I mean, there will be.
Yes, with this development. So that will give you an additional access. And that also connects Southeast Parkway with the traffic study with a signal at Southeast Parkway. So that takes care of the left turn problems that are experienced on Southeast Parkway as well.
How far away would that be from the existing light?
Don't have a scale in front of me, but it would be...
The one coming in Parkway.
Coming into Century Light.
This potential.
It's closer to Commons than it is.
Oh, I was talking about, I was really talking about.
But you meant the light to Parkway Commons to this light next to...
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
It's kind of...
That's
Not one.
800,000 feet.
I don't guess so.
800,000 feet. Michael, you had your hand up.
Yeah, Skip was nice enough to show me around the property this week with his boss, and it's a beautiful piece of property. But the fly in the ointment is the city facilities that are back there. You know, if it wasn't for the gunfire, if it wasn't for all the things that Bev has already listed, this would be really nice, and hopefully with the improvements with the lights and things that we would have some traffic improvement there. But I don't think a sound wall is going to help a 3-story apartment building to shield that from the noise of the gunfire. Third Ward Albany, I frequently get complaints in my neighborhood about the gunfire from the police range.
I was too downtown.
So I can't imagine. And I was over there when we were first getting out of the car. There were some rounds that went off, and you know, it's loud. There's some sort of amplification because of the hillside back there. And I think that's going to be a real negative for people that are going to buy into residences there.
Well, but I'm not going to argue that point, but remember that that's all we're talking about tonight. And tomorrow is increasing the density. It's already zoned, it's already approved, it's already there. So, you know, that we need to stay focused on what the request is. And the request is increase it from 196 to 264. And that's really the point of discussion at this moment.
Skip, I had a question on the signal report. Was that included the additional 84 units, or did you do it for both?
No, that was both. And it was broken out with the numbers that I gave you. It gave the traffic trips that were generated for each use, and it broke it down for the commercial development as well. And that included trips that were generated from within the site, as well as drive-by trips to come into for eating at Chick-fil-A, for instance. So that all was taken into consideration.
The previous plan, did you intend to build 3-story buildings with the previous layout?
In some of the areas, yes, but primarily it was going to be some 2-story units.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Yeah, my only comment would be is, if we had a chance to give it one last shot, I'd certainly like to see interconnectivity between Parkway Commons and this development right here. Certainly not just pedestrian traffic, but vehicular traffic. I know that we've said it, I know that we've run up against a stone wall every time we've approached Parkway Commons, but somewhere there needs to be some leverage or something other that we have that allows us to to have that interconnectivity within the project itself. I think you've even stubbed out a part
right there.
Oh, I see cars pull up there all the time, and they go all the way to where it doesn't go through.
We would certainly be open to that.
Well, it's not you that doesn't want it. Somebody needs it. I did have one thing to
Yes,
say, that I had someone who does live out in the area comment to me that she could hear the shooting. And she also said that the county stopped shooting at either 10 o'clock or maybe even 9 o'clock, but that the city has shooting up until maybe midnight. And as I say,
A 24-hour thing.
I'm just saying, though, that was a,
It's accessible.
that they could be heard.
It is accessible 24 hours.
I'm very sensitive to the comments that Bev made, but I will be supporting the applicant's request for increased density.
Any other comments?
I had one other question. That was Alderman Skinner mentioned 3-story, but you said they were all going to be 2-story?
There will be some 3-story, but they're pulled back further away. The units that were closest to the western boundary, at one point we had those designed as 3-story units. And those have been reduced to 2-story units to keep that lower to the ground.
And we also did say about the creek, that you had, that's
Yes,
going to
sir.
remain as
Yes.
that you
Yeah, instead of
had
having
changed in
public
response to
yes.
the planning staff's request.
Margaret?
I don't think they've left out too much.
But surely you could find something.
I did. Come on, Margaret. I spoke with some of the staff today, and they pointed out that there's odor from sewage when they pump twice a month, I think, at least twice a month, and that's pretty strong. And, you know, we dealt with that all over this town from time to time, trying to get rid of that odor. And I would hate for those extra people, I know there'll be building there, and there'll be residential, but I'd hate for those extra, however many you're going to build, to have to deal with that. So I just want to point, but I do appreciate your being up front with us, Skip, about that, and as I told you, I didn't want to surprise you.
We're going to move on if we can. I'm going to say one thing. I won't have a chance to really comment when it comes before vote, because I don't do that very often. I've been back here, I think most of us have. We've worked hard in this group to look at affordable housing and workforce housing. And one thing that we need to understand, and again, this is my opinion only, but that, you know, this isn't the best piece of property for residential. Everybody knows that, because, and that's why they can put workforce housing there. Because if it were a great piece of property, that it would be worth twice as much, and the cost of building a house would go up. And so we also need to understand that in affordable workforce housing, by economics, they tend to be pieces of property that may not be the best location for residential. I think it's something we should concern about. This has access to shopping and other things. It is there. The other thing that's important is, I mean, if there were already homes there, you know, we wouldn't think about that. But this is a case where you have a developer who believes that there's a market for this, and that it is that person's responsibility to take that risk. The city's not taking the risk. And in addition, the people that move there will move there full well knowing what's there. And they have that choice to do that. And it is up to them to decide. If nobody wants to move there, then we have an issue. And that's not a good thing either. I will agree with that. We would have a project that's not completed. I trust and feel that these people have done a great job. Mark, you asked me a question, would I want to live there? And my answer is no, but I don't want to live in any apartment, quite frankly. But it would be okay for my son to live there. And I think that would be fine if he did, because he could afford. My son can't afford to buy a place in this town at this moment. And this may be an opportunity for him to do his first investment. And he'd love being next to Kroger and Target and could walk in there. So I mean, there's pluses and minuses to all of this. I will say that if there is a tie on the vote, that I will support the recommendation. But we need to move on. Item number 16, ordinance 2010-49 to be entitled an ordinance to amend section 3.3.4 and 5.3.4 of the Franklin zoning ordinance was established as site development standards for a residential detached unit. Is this going to take a while?
No, this is going to be very short.
Okay, because we've gone through this presentation.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, basically what staff is asking for is right now in the traditional sections of the town, you cannot subdivide a piece of property. It is set in place. We are asking to eliminate the lot depth and the maximum lot size in order to be able to have applicants subdivide. Right now, we have applicants who can't subdivide because they can't meet the maximum lot size, and it makes no sense. I've never seen a maximum lot size in any other zoning ordinance, and I'm not sure why it's in this one. But
there's lots of things in that zoning ordinance.
the numbers don't work. The numbers absolutely don't work. You cannot subdivide. So this is what we're asking for. We would look at maximum lot width at 40% of the average of the block, and we think that we will be able to both protect the conformity of the neighborhood while allowing some subdivision that will allow lots that are even in better conformance with the area.
Okay, item number 17, acknowledgement of joint application, Williams County Sheriff's Office for the